My name is Alice, and I'm 27 years old. I was 19 when my mother died. Breast cancer, stage 4. She fought for 2 years, and I sat beside her through every single round of chemotherapy, every sleepless night, every moment when the pain made her grip my hand so hard I thought my fingers would break. My father was there too, in the beginning, but somewhere in the middle of her treatments, he started coming home later, smelling different, making excuses, and 6 months before my mother took her last breath, I found out why. Her name was Sandra. She was 34, worked at my father's office, and apparently had no problem being the reason a dying woman's husband stopped showing up on time. My mother never confronted him, not once. She told me she didn't have the energy to fight two battles at the same time, and she chose to spend what was left of her strength on surviving and on me. 3 weeks before she passed, she asked me to sit with her in the bedroom while my father was out. She held my hand and told me she had taken care of everything. She told me to trust her lawyer, a man named Mr. Gerald Harmon, who had handled her family's finances for over 20 years. She said, "Alice, no matter what happens after I am gone, you will be protected. I made sure of it." I didn't fully understand what she meant at the time. I just nodded and cried and told her I loved her. She died on a Tuesday morning in October. The house felt hollow after that. My father grieved, or at least he performed grief well enough for the relatives and neighbors. But 11 months later, Sandra moved in, and 8 months after that, they were married in a small ceremony I was not invited to attend until 3 days before it happened. I went because my mother raised me to hold myself with dignity, even when the people around me had none. Sandra smiled at me the entire day, like we were already best friends. I smiled back because I had learned from the best. My mother could hide pain behind a graceful face better than anyone I have ever known. For a while, things were tense but manageable. I had moved into a small apartment near my university job, and I kept my visits home brief and polite. Sandra redecorated. My mother's photographs disappeared from the living room walls. Her garden was dug up and replaced with stone tiles. Little by little, every trace of the woman who had built that home with her own 2 hands was erased. I said nothing. I grieved quietly and privately, the way my mother had taught me. Then, one evening in March, almost 2.5 years after my mother's death, my father called and asked me to come over for dinner. I thought it was a genuine attempt to reconnect. I made the drive, sat down at a table that no longer felt like home, and listened while Sandra, cutting her food with the calm confidence of someone who had already decided how the conversation would end, told me that it was time I handed over the inheritance my mother had left me. She said the family needed it. She said $400,000 sitting in an account doing nothing was wasteful. She used the word selfish. She actually used that word while sitting in my mother's house at my mother's dining table wearing a bracelet I was almost certain had come from my mother's jewelry box. I looked at my father. He set down his fork, folded his hands, and said, "Sandra is your family now, Alice. Your mom would have wanted you to take care of the people your dad loves." I felt something go very cold and very still inside me. I did not cry, I did not raise my voice. I simply said I needed to think about it, finished enough of my dinner to seem composed, drove home, and called Mr. Gerald Harmon first thing the next morning. He listened. Then he said, "Alice, your mother anticipated this. Come to my office tomorrow. Bring nothing. I have everything." I walked into Mr. Gerald Harmon's office the next morning with nothing but my car keys and the hollow feeling in my chest that had lived there since my mother died. His office was exactly as I remembered it from childhood: dark wood shelves, the smell of old paper, a framed photograph of a mountain lake behind his desk. He was in his late 60s, silver-haired, with the kind of quiet steadiness that made you feel like the ground beneath your feet was solid, even when everything else was shaking. He stood when I walked in, shook my hand firmly, and gestured to the chair across from his desk. Then he opened a thick manila folder and slid a sealed envelope across to me. He said, "Your mother prepared this 18 months before she passed. She was very specific, very deliberate and very thorough. She told me, and I am quoting her directly, that she hoped she was wrong about what would happen after she was gone, but that she intended to be ready either way. I held the envelope in both hands. My name was written on the front in my mother's handwriting. I had not seen her handwriting in over 2 years. I had to press my lips together hard before I could speak. Mr. Harmon gave me a moment. He was good at reading rooms. Inside the envelope was a letter, 4 pages, front and back, written in the same neat, careful hand my mother had used to sign my school permission slips and birthday cards my whole life. She explained everything. She had quietly restructured her inheritance, money that had come from her own parents, money that had never belonged to my father in any legal or moral sense, into a protected trust in my name alone, months before she was too ill to manage paperwork. The trust had conditions. It could not be touched by any spouse of my father's. It could not be transferred, signed over, or gifted under any kind of family pressure. It required my signature and my signature only, with a mandatory 72-hour waiting period on any withdrawal over $10,000, a clause she built in specifically, Mr. Harmon told me, to protect me from being pressured in a moment of weakness. But that was not the part that broke me. The part that broke me was the last page of her letter. She wrote about me, not about money, not about legal protections, not about my father. She wrote about the girls she watched grow up, the late nights studying together at the kitchen table, the way I used to bring her tea when she was sick, even before she was really sick, the road trip we took to the coast when I was 16, and she let me drive the last 2 hours, even though I only had a learner's permit, and she pretended to be calm the entire time. She wrote, "You have always taken care of the people around you before yourself. I need you to stop doing that now. Use this money to build the life you deserve. Travel somewhere that scares you. Finish the degree you paused for me. Fall in love with something, a city, a career, a person, and commit to it without apology." She signed it the way she always signed cards to me. Not Mom, just her first name, Caroline. Like she was talking to me as a woman, not just as her daughter. I sat in that office chair and cried in a way I had not allowed myself to cry since her funeral. Mr. Harmon quietly placed a box of tissues on the desk and said nothing, which was exactly the right thing to do. That evening, I drove to my father's house, not to argue, not to explain the legal details, not to fight. I simply brought a sealed copy of the trust documentation that Mr. Harmon had prepared and placed it in an envelope addressed to both of them. My father opened it at the kitchen counter while Sandra stood beside him. I watched his face as he read. I watched the moment he understood that my mother had seen all of this coming, that she had planned for it calmly and completely while she was still fighting for her life. His jaw tightened. His eyes went red, and then, for the first time in my entire 27 years of knowing my father, he cried. Not out of regret, maybe. I will never know exactly what broke inside him in that moment, but he cried, and Sandra put her hand on his back, and I picked up my bag and walked out of that house. I have not been back since. The trust is intact. I used part of it to finish my postgraduate degree. I booked a flight to Portugal for the spring, a country my mother had always wanted to visit and never got the chance to. I think about her every single day, but the way I think about her has changed. I no longer only feel the grief of losing her. I feel the full weight of how loved she made sure I was, even from the other side of her own death. She did not just leave me money. She left me proof that she knew me, trusted me, and believed I was worth protecting, at a time when she herself was the one who needed protecting most. My mother was not a loud woman. She did not fight with dramatics or grand gestures. She fought the way she did everything, quietly, intelligently, and completely. Sandra demanded the inheritance my dead mother left me, and my mother, from 18 months in the past, had already answered. If this story moved you the way my mother's letter moved me, please subscribe to this channel.